We are in this lovely building. It's Willis Museum. It belongs to Hampshire County Council. Today we are here doing an exhibition of Parampara project, and this is a project which has been an input of the local community professional dancers. And the purpose of Kala Arts was development of Odissi, which is a very an ancient classical dance form in this country. I am a trained classical Odissi dancer, trained in India, studied with Guru Kelucharan Mahapatra for a number of years. But prior to that, I started my training with my parents as a child. So I've been sort of exposed to a lot of dance forms apart from Odissi and also music. My mother, Sarojini Pati, she is a vocalist, classically trained musician, and also a violinist, very reputed in India. My father is a trained dancer and choreographer in Chau, which is another form of dance, but closely related to Odissi. So a lot of the movement vocabulary initially started with him. And then also he visits me in the UK from time to time, working with some of the local community, giving some of his time.
Who would have believed that Basingstoke would become any sort of a cultural hub? But it is, and I'm really proud of that, and I'm pleased that it is. And yes, I think through Kala and Sushmita and the work that she's done, yes, it's put us a little bit on the cultural map, certainly as far as South Asia is concerned.
Odissi dance is 2,000 years old. It can be traced in temples, which sort of started during that period.
I've been to all sorts of parts of India, various states. The very first one I went to was actually Orissa, obviously where Odissi dance originates. So that gives me a special connection with that particular form of dance. It's a really rich tapestry of culture out there. And for me now to see that it's being translated over here as well is wonderful.
Odissi started in Orissa, which is in the east part of India. It's also called the land of Jagannath. Jagannath means the Lord of the Universe. Jagatara Natha, that's what it's called in the Oriya culture. But it also means anybody who is not Hindu can also worship the Lord. So the whole idea behind it also was to bring a lot of the communities together.
Originally, I'm from Hungary, and I've learned Odissi in Hungary. I came to Basingstoke with my husband. He's from India, from Orissa. And we've been living here for a year now. And I've found Sushmita about 2-3 months back, and since then I'm her student. Odissi, as you know, is from India, from the temples of India. It was as a worshipping for God. So this was also in the picture when I started to learn. I wanted to do something for the gods.
The dance is very predominantly seen in the temples. It's the temple of Jagannath, also the Sun Temple, because a lot of the makeup, the jewelry and the headdress, the way it's put, it represents the sun. Also the makeup which we have represents the sun. So it's called the Konark Temple. The newer temples, when they were constructed, they actually had the dance hall in mind, because dance was a very important part of the worship of the deity.
Kala does a great job of getting into schools and involving parents, teachers, pupils, not just in the dance itself, but in the preparation, in the costumes, etc., etc. And yes, I think it's broadening our knowledge and the depth of education in parts of Basingstoke tremendously, and I think it's great for the children to learn. what's going on in other parts of the world.
The families working together brought in a lot of awareness of Odissi, but also the heritage of Odissi. Because sometimes we will do workshop in a school but not necessarily talk about the heritage. And also in this project there were people who had gone to Orissa to study about the form, so they could bring that experience to the local people in Basingstoke, in Hampshire. They were able to share that in the Mela as well, in Eastleigh Mela, which takes place annually. So a huge amount of people benefited from that exposure.
Odissi is one of the 8 styles of Indian classical dance. It hails from the eastern region of India, from the state of Orissa. There's evidence that dance was an important part of the culture in Orissa dating back 2,000 years. The costume for Odissi, you can see here on the mannequin, this is the typical costume worn for performances. One of the most important pieces of jewelry is the Bengopatti. And also it's quite important because it helps isolate the torso. And torso movement is a very important part of Odissi dance. In fact, it's one of the signature movements. So with the Bengopatti, you're able to see that movement of the torso more clearly. We also have alta, which is common in a lot of regions in India, in Bengal, in the south, used to decorate the feet and the fingertips, and that something is worn during performance time.
Alta comes from a alta leaf. So in the olden days, what would happen is actually we wouldn't get this in a liquid format, but we would take the leaf and rub it against our feet and our hands to sort of make that color, and it's a lovely red color. Red also is quite an auspicious color for the sort of Hindu tradition. This is a sandalwood pacemaker. So what would happen is the dancers would actually make a bit of sandalwood paste, and they would use a matchstick or a toothpick, and they would sort of circle around little dots around the bindi. And also some of the men dancers or little sort of children dancers, they would actually have little dots going all across the face.
Another important part is the tahiya, or the crown, which is typically worn around the bun. And this is inserted in the center. This part here is said to represent this, what you would say the steeple, the part of the temple of Lord Jagannath, which is again central to Odissi. There's always reference being made to the temple of Lord Jagannath, Jagannath being the patron deity of Odissi dance. These tahiyas are actually made from a type of bark that are then carved individually to make these little flowerets and then put on. The feeling is quite like styrofoam, but it's amazing to think that you can just carve the bark and then turn them into these really intricate flowers. This picture here is of Ratikant Mahapatra. He's the son of Guru Kelucharan Mahapatra, who's one of the founding fathers of Odissi dance today. He was one of the key architects in putting the dance together and is recognized as the mainstream school of Odissi dance.
The print which we use in Odissi is called kumbha, which you see here. So all the sort of patterns would have this on the dress, whether it's a silk sari or a cotton sari. Again, it's sort of temple traditions. So you see a lot of the temples in Orissa would have patterns describing where sort of it comes from.
That's the problem, that people see artistic performances from afar and not close enough to what's inside it. But if they see a performance, which is what obviously will in most cases attract people's interest, and then think, well, I'd like to have a go at that, and then perhaps do a taster and find that it suits them, then obviously that brings about cultural understanding and possibly more than just an understanding, but an ongoing lifetime enjoyment.